Good morning. God bless. What is great, good, and real? It's Valentine's Day. And while I am inclined to talk about how much I love myself, it's Saturday. And so it's reflection day for me. And given where we are with the channel and where I am personally with my life relative to what I've been paying attention to, what I've been trying to foster and communicate, the response from our community, I thought that we would reflect together and talk about our week. And I always wonder, when I wake up on a Saturday, there's sort of this exhale that I know that certain things are not going to require my attention. And I find myself reflecting on the power of what gives me balance, what gives me authoritative presence, and what keeps my life moving in the direction that I want it to move. And so in that way, just the idea of what did I pay attention to this week? I asked myself immediately, how much did I pay attention to myself? And what does it even mean to pay attention to yourself? How do you pay attention to yourself over the course of the week? How present were you? How often did you drift? Which effectively means how often, or at least means to me, how often were you awake versus how often were you asleep? And I think while that idea of consciousness, being awake, spirituality, being asleep has massive implications for how we feel and how we process life, it's not a judgment. And yet in the same way, I just read something that hit me really hard, which is that we are in constant thought, and to think constant thought means to come to the reality that we are in constant judgment, for otherwise how would we conclude our thought? And it got me to thinking, what do I actually think about when I think about myself, when I think about my week, when I think about how I love myself or not? There are some days when I just don't love myself. And I wonder, how often do you experience that, and how much of that implies being awake versus being asleep? And certainly one of the things that jars me and really causes me to reflect and have some introspection is to not only be awake when I don't feel great about me. Because naturally, knowing all the cognitive pieces I understand about consciousness and the mind and how it works, these things will start to feel like they go on in perpetuity. Certainly it does not, because to think that way in perpetuity would be a disastrous experience for life. And I hate to think that any of us have that sort of a conclusion about ourselves, that we could be that deep in difficulty that we forget how much we actually love ourselves. Because if you conclude any thought and think about anything you might have done for the course of this week, as we are talking about what did I pay attention to this week, how much of what you did for yourself was in love, like genuine self-love? You have to surmise that at minimum, you wouldn't function in the capacity that you function over the course of a week. Like a week, a lot can happen in a week, right? So much it requires our attention, so little requires our attention. But certainly, we wouldn't carry out our week if it wasn't beneficial for us, would we not? And naturally, there are some things that we think that say, I could make this better, which is why I reflect in the way I do. Still trying to find my comfort zone here for seating. But what did you pay attention to this week? Did you script your week? Do you script your weeks? Do you have a routine that you are sort of cognitive of consciously? Are you awake doing your routine? How much of your routine should you actually be awake for? One could argue you should be so deep in how you love yourself and your routine that you don't think about it often. You just think about, am I where I need to be? Am I performing how I need to perform? Is it having the impact that it should be having on myself? Do you think about that while you're thinking about how you're going about thinking through your week? How much of what you think about yourself, and how much do you think about how the week should go, is where you want to be for your week? One of the things that I considered for the self-love episodes, I forget which one it was. It might even be the one that dropped yesterday. Would you hire yourself? Would you want to be friends with yourself? Would you want to be in a relationship with yourself? Do you trust yourself? These are not things that we should overlook. These are not things that we should not give thought to. We should be deliberate. I know I try to be deliberate with how we think these things. Where am I with my trust level? And we could tie in all the words that apply: discipline, fortitude, consistency, commitment. How many of those things apply to you over the course of the week? How often do you consider those things as you are thinking through your week? What happened to you this week? Was it a very standard week by your sort of estimation and judgment? Would you repeat this week? If you repeated this exact week, this past week, for the next 5 years, what would change? Would you want it to change? How fast would it change? How fast would it fly by without you realizing nothing possibly changed? And yet, in that way, how could that much time go by and nothing had changed? Impossible for me to think. Impossible. How you think the things you think naturally change. So what did I pay attention to this week? And why do I think it's significant? I paid attention a lot to God this week, to the relationship and how I believe it's bi-directional. I paid attention to see if there are things that I'm missing, things that I haven't listened to. I paid attention to how much attention I'm giving. I get really cognizant of understanding I have a mode, I have aspirations, and I have goals. Contextually, we talk regularly on the channel about the significance of goals. Where am I with my goals and what I've asked God to be for me through endeavoring out for those goals? Oftentimes when I talk about maybe I slept through some things, the redundancy of the prayer, the asking, the support, sometimes you forget to check in. Sometimes I forget to say, yo, I've asked for you to provide a certain level of support for me that I don't fall on my face. But I haven't stopped to ask you, are you getting what you need from me? So if there's this bi-directional hook and pull, and there's this inner seer that I believe, right, the image of creator in us, and God is seeing through me and emanating through me, am I in a position to best place God in God's most optimal sense of creation, right? Naturally, of course, we all have deficiencies. We all have flaws. And the idea of imperfection certainly is relevant because we all know where we fall, at least fall short of. But am I giving God the best opportunity as a vessel? As part of my prayer, I am grateful that I am to be a vessel for God, to allow God, right? So I had a check-in. Like, yo, I'm hopeful that I'm aligned with where I need to be, where I said I would be. I'm consistent, and that there's trust built within myself and all the faculties alive for self. Yo, do you need anything? Am I missing anything? Not like missing anything because I want something to blow up, but along the journey of trying to be God, faith, honor, loyalty, around trying to play the roles that allow me to feel like myself, to be an individual self that is coherent, that is mindful, that is thoughtful for myself first, right? Because I got to bring the greatest possible loved self to the forefront. Otherwise, everything around my circle fractures. Did I do all that? Did I keep my promises? Did I live in the truth that I believe is truthful for me while being able to function in other truths, right? Was I combative in any way with myself? Did I overthink things or not think things through at a deep enough level? Am I paying attention to what you're saying back to me? As I've said many, many times, God whispers. Have I paid attention to that whisper? Have I deviated in any way? And it's not a matter of repentance, right? But was I where I said I would be, doing what I said I would do with the intentionality around what I said I would do it with, or how I said I would do it? What attention did I give myself over the course of the week? And how does that correlate with my relationship with God? Right? And it's not a question of judgment, but the judgment I place on myself for the level of attention to detail. how often did I stay committed to my commitments? How often did I give myself the possibility to trust myself as deeply as I'm able to trust myself, to love myself as able as I'm deeply to love myself? One of the things I read too that really struck me and hit me was the idea that to expand one's consciousness, to expand one's self, the commitment to self, a lot of unlearning must occur. How willing am I to learn and simultaneously unlearn? How willing am I to understand the nuances of my relationship with myself and God in the immediate, and how it fluctuates from moment to moment, and how even the perception of God for me changes moment to moment, that the more commitment I have, the more faithfully I can move. Is that not logical to think? So when I consider how much I paid attention to God this week, I wonder how often I was able to expand the faith with which I move in that relationship. And it's always going to correlate back to, if I am a vessel and I've been given certain faculties, we disregard the body so much. Don't trust the flesh. The flesh is so susceptible, but don't allow it to be so susceptible that you ignore it. Your body is the first place that will signal to you that something is off. You feel it. You feel it. Your nervous system activates. How much of my nervous system is activating, and to what degree is it activating when I give myself time to think to myself, when I work on myself, when I consider my conversations and my relationship with God? So if I'm paying attention to myself there, then how did it impact my relationships? I'm committed still to my business work. How much commitment did I make to my business, to the teams that I manage, to the people that are involved in those relationships? Was I attentive to their needs? I believe strongly in a servant mindset. How much of a servant mindset did I apply to myself that allowed me to apply it to my peers, to my colleagues, to my superiors? We all have hierarchy. Did I manage up properly? Did I manage down properly? Upstream and downstream. Did I meet the criteria for the week? Was I honest? Was I transparent? Was I committed? How did the world respond to me in my business life? I happened to go through some performance evaluations. Those conversations are difficult. When you look at somebody and say, yo, you've had a good year. You met the expectations that I would expect for you to have met for the course of the year. And someone says, well, I believe I exceeded my expectations. Well, we got to have an honest conversation about where you're at and where I'm at. That comes with the responsibility of my life. Mara, good to see you as well, my friend. Hope all is blessed. Hope all is blessed. Let me know how you're doing. I'll check back. I always wonder, as an IT guy, the lag. Like how soon does Mara say, greetings to you, Jeff, before I see it? When I respond to her and say, yo, what's good, Mara? Does she hear me? And then it comes through in the communication field. I don't know why things like that. Well, I know why things like that trigger my mind, but those things, they start to play with me in my soul. So how did I behave this week? How did I behave with myself? How did I love myself? How did I take that out into my business relationships? Significant, right? I talk openly and regularly about the commitment level. So if we think about, if we reflect over the course of the week, would you hire you? She's doing great. Mara's doing great. That's great to hear. Mara's always doing great. I love it when people are doing great. I have one person that I mentor. I've been with him for a long time. I say, hey, Jeff, how are you? I'm blessed. I ask him how he's doing. He says, perfect. Real slow. How you doing? I'm not going to say his name, but how you doing, sir? Perfect. He's, it doesn't matter what's happening. It's been like 5 or 6 years we've had a relationship, and I've watched him grow immensely. Perfect. I'm perfect, no matter what's going on. So you have these performance evaluations. Those are critical conversations, and I pay attention to this. So when we talk about reflection and what do you pay attention to, as a business leader, a people leader, or somebody who has the great responsibility, and I take serious responsibility with this, to help nurture careers and lives, because it has an impact. I pay attention to when crucial conversations are coming up. I pay attention to how it might make that person feel, because I know how it makes me feel when I hear something that might feel disparaging. And to look at somebody and say, you did well, but you didn't quite do as well as you think you did, that feels very uncomfortable. So immediately I sort of brace myself not to dilute the conversation, but to be cognizant and conscious of how this is going to impact this person when I have to let them know what I'm feeling about what they need to hear. And naturally, then I have to open myself up to, well, what is that person going to respond to me? I don't anticipate the conversation too much, because then it gets to the pressure of what's happening, and then the moment. You lose the moment. You never want to lose the moment in all this, in my opinion. When you're talking to yourself, and I talk to myself regularly, when you're having conversations with other selves, to have introspection and reflection. And if I know I think about my week, and today's Reflection Saturday, I wonder, what is this person reflecting on? Has this person even reflected? How long has it been since they reflected? If I have my relationship with God and I'm locked in with my relationship with God, and I'm asking things like, yo, what might have I missed over the course of time? I wonder what this person might be missing, what they might be conversing about, and what they might be ultimately receiving. What am I hearing? What is that person hearing? When I use these words to communicate, what is the impact that is occurring? I reflect on this deeply. If at minimum, I want to be effective. So if you remove emotion in my roles, in my life roles, that makes me feel like I either want to repeat this week or not want to repeat this week, that I want to see growth or that I should expect growth, right? So we measure. So I talked about I had to come back to God and say, what am I missing? What am I not doing? Instead of saying, yo, where's the next level? Well, naturally, you can anticipate the next level based on the amount of work you've put in. Is that not fundamentally logical? Because you don't put in work towards growth and not see growth. You don't water and water and water and water and water seeds and not see something sprout out. It's a natural correlation with how growth works. So I'm also cognizant of that. But emotionally, I also don't say, I'm going to do this because it means growth. No, I'm responsible and attentive to the situation. Why? So when I reflect on it, when I have some introspection, I don't say something that I might not want to, that I don't want to say again. That's oftentimes what I think about with reflection. What did I do this week that I wanted to do? What did I do this week that I'd rather take back? Because to have things that I would rather take back over the course of the week and repeat them is madness. Then you don't have growth in the way that you would expect. You still grow towards what you don't want to repeat. And naturally, if I don't want to repeat certain things and have them repeated, I work on not repeating them. Is that not logical? Does it not make sense? I think that's a powerful thing for us to consider. You don't reflect solely, I don't reflect solely on what worked, what didn't work, what don't I want to repeat. Because if you think about the episode that dropped, I think last night, would you hire you? Would you want to be in a relationship with you? If you came outside of yourself and you looked at yourself and you ask, how much can I trust this person? How much does this person keep their word? How much is this person on time all the time when they said they will be on time? Then you look at that person and say, I would want to be in a relationship with them. If that person doesn't meet that criteria, you naturally wouldn't want to be in a relationship with them. I don't want to be a person I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with. Is that not logical? So if I think about that, then I keep my word. And sometimes my word is like, yo, I had this debate. I'll talk briefly about my children before I go back into the reviews. My son, he has a Pokemon fixation. Thursday at Target, the cards drop. They just random times. I took him right after work. 5 o'clock, boom. We got in the car, boom, we went. They didn't have cards. At 7:30, he got an alert. Yo, I think they got cards. A new set just dropped. Can you take me? No. Why? I don't want to go right now. Yeah, but I don't want to go right now. And that's just, and it's not meant to be finality in that to be disruptive to his world. I get you. I understand what you want. I really want to provide for you, but I'm not going because I already took you. That's a boundary. It's pushing the end of the night. I'm not doing it. Now, when I reflect on it, I feel terrible. I'm like, damn, I should have just took him. But also there are times I'm just not going to do it. And that is okay too. Now, when you reflect on it, you decide the next time this pops up, the answer may change. But I reflect on it to understand, what was the emotion? What was he feeling? What was I feeling? Was it right? In his eyes, it was wrong. In my eyes, it was right. We're both right. None of us are wrong, technically. That's just how life happens to work. But am I somebody I'd want to be in a relationship with? Am I somebody who's honorable enough to my word, even when my word is no? I found that to be one of the most difficult things. When I tapped into my spirituality, you get this influx of feeling I'm locked in with God. That means I got to say yes to everything. No, it doesn't. No, it does not. Some things are no. Some things are sorry, not right now. And some things, I got a text last night from a family member. Yo, call me. No. You don't just randomly text me 9 o'clock at night when I was finished praying and about to go to sleep. I don't call. No. Anyhow. So I consider the fabric of who I am and what I want to have a relationship with myself. And then I understand the responsibilities and the accountabilities. So I'm having reviews. And a lot of what happens during evaluations is like, okay, I went through the entire year. I was great for the last 3 months. Yeah, but a year is 12 months. What about the 9 months that preceded it? So I'm very technical that way to understand an evaluation over the course of time is significant for the course of time we are evaluating and has impact to future time. Is that not logical? Of course it is, because there'll be another year. So you have the conversation, you understand where that person's at, you give them feedback and critique. Generally speaking, you hope, and I take notes over the course of the year in relationships, because I've been through this enough times to know, when I meet this person and tell them you've just met the standard, they're gonna have pushback. Because why? They feel very emotional. What do you mean I just met the standard? Well, first of all, I have a very high standard. If you can meet my standard professionally, you're doing a pretty good job. You also have a role and a title. Your role and your title has certain expectations. What roles do you play in your life right now? Where are you in your life? There's you to you, that's a role. There's you with your faith, that's a role. There's you as a family, if you have a significant other, that's a role. I'm talking to Mara, that's a role. I have people that report to me, that's a role, right? I have a job, that's a role. Are you meeting the criteria? Just meeting the criteria is meeting expectations. It doesn't garner higher compensation or less. It just means that that's what it was. You did what you were supposed to do. That's great. You shouldn't dilute that. But if you want more, how could you expect more and do exactly what's required? The answer is, how could that be logically possible? You don't get more by doing the minimum. You don't get less by doing the minimum. You get the minimum. So you have those conversations. And I reflect on that. And part of what I reflect on is like, yo, okay, you had a great year, but what did you neglect? I think about that with myself. What did I neglect this week? So if I know there are some things I wouldn't want to repeat, is it because I neglected some things? A lot of times what I reflect on is what I neglected, did I neglect it because I was fearful, because I knew it required a lot of work, a lot of discomfort? I try very hard to avoiding discomfort. And I know it may sound cliche, but I understand the friction point of growth is the discomfort. And so, but oftentimes too, I have to neglect certain things because where am I with my priorities? I can't be everywhere at the same time. And I can't be everything to everybody if I'm not first everything to myself, and then take that everything self into the everybody I need to be. And then also, where am I at and who am I with in other selves that require my attention? So sometimes the neglect is like, well, I couldn't be here because I couldn't tend to that because I had other things to tend to. Priorities conflicted. Some things I neglect because I'm just like, man, I'm tired. Was I really tired? I have to ask myself that question. Was I really fatigued? What did I do over the course of that day, over the course of the end of the week, that made me feel like I couldn't tend to this? Because everything I don't pay attention to or don't tend to in an attentive fashion, I make it tentative, has an impact upstream and downstream to my own personal self, to my own personal commitment. I said I would do it. Did I do it? Yes. Did I not do it? No. Why? Do I need to do it? Next week, I need to make sure I get on that. So I certainly think about what I neglected over the course of the week. Also, there's a reality that you drift. And we know we get into we talk about flow state, but you can't be in flow state and be that attentive for so long. You drift. You just hope that a lot of what you're attentive to and awake for creates what you drift, or the principles for how you drift. So if I say God, faith, honor, loyalty, when I get into flow state and I kind of just get out of deep work and I'm just flowing in all my other roles, how much did I drift away and not stay true and honor my principles, right? Because that's significant. What caused me to drift? What caused me to stop paying attention? Because even when I'm not paying attention consciously, I'm picking up attention to certain things, right? Does it align with who I want to be and where I want to be in my life? Awfully significant. And then naturally, where did I stay awake? What brought me to consciousness? What stimulated consciousness for me? How much of it was positive? How much was perceptually negative? Why was it negative? Was it really negative, or was I just in my feelings? Was I just not in a place where I was mentally able to sort of, my son says cope. I got you coping. Was I able to cope with it, right? Where was I at in certain places of the day over the course of the week? Not insignificant. Why? If it's not worth repeating, don't repeat it. Another thing I reflect on is, did I love intentionally or accidentally? And I think about this deeply. If I'm someone I can love because I'm keeping my word, did I love myself intentionally? Did I love those around me intentionally? Or did I do so accidentally? Well, what would constitute intentional love? Do you really plan out your week? And if you plan out your week, how much of that week did you show up for? What promises did you make and did you make a promise this week? Or was this a promiseless week? Because if you want growth, but you didn't make a promise that pushed you towards an extreme as far as growth, then there's no room for growth. That's love too. That is absolutely love. I made a commitment. What commitments did you make this week that you intentionally kept? They don't have to be outrageous, but there should be promises. There should be commitments. I can go over my commitments. I know what time I'm supposed to get up, right? You're like, oh, I tell myself, get up, I get up. It's not inconsequential to consciousness and spirit and faithfulness. I don't hit the snooze ever. I don't. And if I decide I need to sleep in, I reestablish that border and that parameter. Today is not a 3 o'clock in the morning that I'm getting up at 6. And then I do that. And I don't have any residual for it. I don't feel bad about it. I made the intentional move. I get up. I pray. I read. I come down. I record. I write content. How else would you manifest the life you see for yourself if you aren't keeping promises over the course of the week? If you know that your life is spoken for at a certain time too, if you work a 9 to 5 and you have a family per se, your time to grow is like, it's finite. It's minimal. You got to create time. Did I create time for myself? Did I give myself time to create time for myself? All these things are massively valuable. Was I intentional about it? Was I intentional about it? How intentional was I about it? Not inconsequential, significant. Another week has passed. Then the last thing I think about as far as reflecting for the week, did I build anything new or did I just maintain? And some seasons are maintenance. Some seasons you establish a new identity and you build sort of new structure and you pour new concrete and foundation and you got to put the studs up, right? And then at some point you build the infrastructure around it, right? The windows, the dressings, all those things come, right? The heat, the water. So and as it gets built, it got to run. It got to run before you can start building something else. If you're in build mode, how much are you building and how much effort did you put into the build? How much conscious effort did you put into the build? What adjustments do you need to make relative to what you were building over the course of the week? If you're in maintenance mode, what needs to be maintained? What's your emotional state? How much of that is being maintained faithfully? Not like, oh, I'm in a blissful, happy, all that. I talk about this regularly, right? But emotionally, I maintain myself. When I was uncomfortable, I managed my discomfort. When I was feeling a little, I went through a moment this week where I thought I was feeling a bit, what is the word? Self-doubt. It wound up being that I needed to have some physical sort of, I had to have a really good workout. You know what I mean? In order to let go of some nervous energy. But I paid attention to the nervous energy and I started to ask myself, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Why is this here? Why is it present? What is it speaking to me about? I reflected on where I was at, what I had done and what I hadn't done, what I had been actually going through and not going through. Back to the physical body, I had some ailments that were restricting me in certain ways. I had to kind of let that heal. Where I'm at now with, I feel a little bit better. I got to release some energy, some tension. That's significant in my world and in my life and how I maintain myself. That's maintenance. I got to be able to tend to what my body's feeling and not feeling. I got to address that. What is this self-doubt? What is that emotional pull? Have I been committed? Have I been meeting my commitments? All right, then maybe I'm just feeling self-doubt because that's just the reality of life. Maybe there was something I missed. Maybe there was something I was not quite paying attention to that caught my attention subconsciously, and it's sort of just rattling around my soul and in the back of my mind that I need to bring to the forefront, that I need to address out loud and speak out loud. I went through a situation. When you speak it out loud, it sort of turns into like this fog or this air. You can inhale that and release it, right? Some things, maybe you need to speak out loud to yourself or maybe to another self. Sometimes speaking out loud to yourself feels a little awkward. For me, I had to learn how to feel comfortable in that. I speak out loud on the mic. I speak out loud to myself when I think I need to hear myself speak. I find the closest person to me, who's my wife. I release, right? You got to let go of some things. Some things just got to be said out loud. That's part of maintenance. But consider that the significance of that over the course of how you are reflecting, how you are feeling, how you are producing, what you're giving attention to. And with that, we can close this morning's events. I'm going to get to a recording. I'm excited about my next recording. I got the script up, and I feel good about the next set of drops we're going to have. But if this is a reflection, if you reflect like me on this day, or you're choosing to reflect over the course of the next day, 2 or week, wherever you're at in your life, what might be disrupting you? There's oftentimes or regularly I think about, what can I disrupt? Well, what might be disrupting you? What has caused some friction in your life that you haven't quite been able to overcome? You might want to disrupt that disruption by simply adhering to the disruption, understanding what it's telling you, and noticing that you are being disrupted. Understand what that noise is about. Then there's a reality of, is it sound or is it just noise? If it's disruptive sound, because then you can hear the frequency and you understand what's going on, you got to address that disruption. If it's just noise, sort of internal noise, you're just fluctuating between emotions, that's just a reality of the human experience. Work yourself through that. Naturally own it. Own what might be disrupting you. Own where you might need further disruption. Own the emotional experience that occurs, whether it's self-doubt, whether it's you're feeling highly confident, and anywhere in between, whether you're in a self-love mood or sort of a self-deflation mood. It's all good as long as you own it for yourself, you name it, identify it, and you can continue to move forward. Then yield, of course, the reality that it's all going to be just sort of copacetic and non-emotional. It is highly emotional. There are states of drift. There are states of sorrow. There are things you want to get back for yourself that you can't. That is a normal course of the evolution of life. Yield the reality that everything's going to be exactly how you think it's going to be, even when you are and continue to be where you said you would be at all times. Then, of course, observe. Introspection, reflection, observing where you're at. What is the impact that my week had on me? What is the impact that it had on others? Did I grow where I think I wanted to grow? Did I see the results I was looking for? Observe how it made you feel. Observe how you feel right now. And then naturally unleash. Hopefully God blesses us with more days and more weeks. They're going to pass. Time compounds whether you are conscious of it or not. The only thing we can do is unleash movement towards the person that we think we want to be for ourselves on a day that's supposed to be all about love, right? As always, I appreciate your time. Mara, stay blessed. It was good to see you this morning, and you all have a fantastic day. Peace.